All right, let's talk about the history of Europe. I mean, where do you even begin? It's this massive, sprawling story of epic empires, ideas that literally changed the world, and brutal conflicts that have shaped our entire planet. So how on earth do you tell a story that big? Well, we're going to try, by focusing on the moments when Europe completely reinvented itself.
And it really does start on a grand scale. You have these empires that just dominated the known world. Think about the Romans. They didn't just conquer, they connected everything. They built this incredible network of roads and aqueducts stretching all the way from Britain to the Middle East, creating this one huge political machine where ideas, goods, and armies could move faster than ever before.
But Europe's story is just as much about the ideas that changed how we think about everything. I'm talking about concepts like democracy and philosophy, born in the little city-states of ancient Greece. You could almost say that became the continent's foundational software. And of course, the scientific breakthroughs that came later, they sparked the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution. They reinvented the entire world.
But if you boil it all down, more than anything, it's a story defined by this relentless cycle of collapse and rebirth. It's this continuous and, often violent process where old worlds are completely shattered just to make way for the new.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How do you possibly cram all of that drama and detail into just a 5-minute explainer?
Well, here's how. You focus on the turning points, the critical moments of reinvention that just fundamentally altered the continent's path. So let's dive in.
Okay, so our journey starts with the original blueprint for Europe, the foundation of ideas, laws, and beliefs that were all laid down in the ancient world.
And this blueprint, it was really built on 3 huge pillars. First, you've got ancient Greece. They gave us a source code, really, the foundational ideas in government, philosophy, and science. Then, the Roman Empire comes along and basically absorbs all of it, scaling it up with their absolute genius for law and engineering. And finally, the rise of Christianity gave the continent this unifying spiritual and moral framework that would act like a glue for centuries.
And this wasn't like 3 separate things happening. It was a direct handoff. Rome didn't just conquer Greece, it absorbed its culture, creating this powerful Greco-Roman world that really became the gold standard for everything that came after.
But that unified world, it wasn't going to last. The first great reinvention came when it all came crashing down.
I mean, at its absolute height, Rome was the very symbol of unity and stability. It was this vast, interconnected world, all operating under one system of law.
And then, this. After the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, that unity just evaporated. You had this huge power vacuum, and it was quickly filled by all these competing kingdoms. The continent literally shattered into pieces.
So, what do? How do you govern in the middle of all that chaos? The answer was a brand new, decentralized system, feudalism. All power became local. Your loyalty was to your lord, and he gave you protection in exchange for your labor. This system would define life in Europe for nearly 1,000 years.
But of course, that medieval world wasn't permanent either. The next great reinvention came as a series of intellectual and cultural explosions that just tore that old order apart.
You had 3 massive forces hitting Europe pretty much all at once. First, the Renaissance sparked this incredible new interest in the classical art and science of Greece and Rome. At the exact same time, you have the Reformation, which challenged the central authority of the Catholic Church. And finally, the Age of Discovery was opening up entirely new continents and trade routes. And you know what powered all of this? The printing press. These movements completely changed Europe's view of itself and its place in the world.
But these new ways of thinking, they didn't just stay in books. Oh no. They ended up igniting a series of violent, world-altering revolutions.
This period right here is what built the modern world. You had the Enlightenment, which championed reason over superstition, arguing that you could actually improve society through logic. Then the French Revolution took those ideas right to the streets, overthrowing a king for these radical new ideals of liberty and equality. And at the same time, the Industrial Revolution was changing everything about how people lived and worked, pulling them off the farms and into the new machinery of factories and cities.
But let's be clear, this transformation was unbelievably bloody. The wars that erupted after the French Revolution, especially the Napoleonic Wars that spread its ideals by force, they just engulfed the entire continent. We're talking an estimated 4 million deaths. This was change on a terrifying, massive scale.
And out of the ashes of all that conflict, a powerful new idea emerged: nationalism. It's the belief that people who share a culture and a language should have their own state. And this single idea would completely redraw the map of Europe, creating countries like Germany and Italy, and, well, tragically setting the stage for even bigger conflicts to come.
And boy, did those conflicts arrive. They came with a vengeance in the 20th century, which turned out to be the most violent and destructive period in all of human history.
The 20th century was just this relentless cascade of global catastrophes. All those industrial and nationalist forces from the 19th century just exploded into World War I. Then, the devastating economic collapse of the Great Depression followed, which created the instability that led right into World War II. And even when that war ended, there was no peace. It was just the start of a new global conflict, the Cold War.
By 1947, the continent was, once again, shattered. It was split in two by what Winston Churchill famously called an Iron Curtain. It divided a democratic, capitalist West, allied with the U.S., from an authoritarian, communist East, controlled by the Soviet Union.
Which brings us to today, to Europe's most recent, and maybe its most ambitious reinvention yet, a deliberate attempt to build a lasting peace.
And the change has been just astonishingly fast. I mean, in the lifetime of so many people watching this, Europe went from being the epicenter of a global nuclear standoff to a continent that's now largely unified. After the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, old enemies started this new process of economic and political integration, the European Union, which was designed specifically to make another great war in Europe unthinkable.
So, from a unified Roman Empire to a fractured feudal world, through ages of revolution and the absolute horrors of 2 world wars, Europe's story has always been one of constant, often brutal reinvention. And that leaves us with the final, crucial question. In a story that's so defined by division and conflict, is this latest experiment in unity the final chapter, or is it just the prelude to the next reinvention?